Hello. Welcome everybody to Fake Whale Live. Today we have Kevin Abosch and Skygolpe, two absolute crushers who, need no introduction. But thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having
Thank you,
me.
man.
Absolutely. Kevin, I love your shades. I love the background.
Thanks. Thank you.
In the sky, you as well. Looking good, everybody. How's everybody doing this morning? Well, it's not morning for both of you.
I'm looking a bit rosy from I don't know, maybe too much sun out by the pool this morning. It was hot day.
Not a bad problem to have.
Yeah, I was just basically working all day, so a little break with some friends, having a chat, not bad.
Absolutely. And this is actually my first time meeting you, Kevin. So it's a real pleasure,
It's a real pleasure, and as I think you know, I have a couple. I've collected a couple pieces of your work, and happy to meet you in the flesh, so to speak.
Absolutely. I had an opportunity to message you, obviously, and thank you, but I did want to thank you in person here as well. So like it means a lot, like it was very meaningful to have you as the collector of some of those pieces because it's just your status within this community is very well known, and it precedes you, and it's very, you have a very stoic presence that I admire within this community, and I admire that. I really do, so I appreciate it.
I'll just sit here stoically.
Yeah, fair enough. What is the connection with you and Sky? Is there a connection between you two, or like I was thinking that would be a great lead-in question to kind of activate everybody in the conversation about maybe what was you two's first interaction within this space, or maybe Sky, you can say, what was your first time interacting with a Abosch piece, and vice versa.
So I had the pleasure to. I didn't know Kevin work before the NFT, so I actually came to know his work once I joined really the NFT space because he's a real OG. So from the very beginning, his name, I was seeing his name popping around and doing some research. Then I really studied a bit about his work and his approach, and being one of the few conceptual artist in the space and being myself really interested into conceptual art, so I immediately feel a connection with his work. And then I think we have a friend in common who is Mattia Cuttini. So Mattia always, speaks super highly about Kevin. And then finally we had the chance to meet in Milan during the Dark exhibition. And it was a crazy a crazy night, really surprising. Maybe because I don't know what I can say, what I cannot say, so maybe Kevin,
Oh
I let
wow!
you.
It's like a make it
It
sound
was
like
a surprise. It started with a surprise, so I just want to say that, and now I leave Kevin to complete it.
I just thought I'm coming into Milan, and I knew there were going to be a number of great local artists, local legends, well, global legends, but local people in any case. And there we put together a dinner. I think it must have been a Sunday, because I think it was difficult to find a restaurant of this caliber open on a Sunday, but we did.
It was.
And yeah. I forget the name, but it was a Michelin star, lovely, like really inventive restaurant.
Contraste.
That's right,
Like
Contraste. And I don't know how many dishes we had. It was a tasting menu with about a dozen dishes, and we ordered some lovely wines, and it was, and I think it may have been one of the first kind of post-COVID, well, not post-COVID, but in-person meetings I'd had, after a couple of years of COVID. And what a lovely evening. My wife was there too, and it was just so much fun. And I think from my perspective, the most valuable thing was just comparing notes with other artists who have experienced this sort of phenomenon and have had, and quite frankly, I think pretty much, yeah, everybody at the table there had some level of success as well. So that in itself was rare, to have so many people, I think, at one table who had achieved some modicum of success with NFTs. And I think we just all had, we all collect data all the time, whether it's about the market or collectors or the hate we receive or the love we receive. And it was just fun to sort of see that, just because, and I think because we've been living alone for a better part of a couple of years, it was really exciting to just hear from other people that they were having similar experiences. It's just again about human sharing. I think that's what it was. It was just fun because we're all very,
sharing experiences. It was great, really.
Artists can be very very private, and we do our own thing. I mean, I know you guys collaborate, and I've done a couple collaborations too, but they're kind of few and far between. So we're kind of operating sort of in our own little bubble. And I think there's a real value when those bubbles kind of bump up against each other and start popping.
I agree 100%. That phenomenon of like meeting up with other people, for me, it wasn't just, post-COVID and being, cooped up. It's that exactly what you're talking about right now, Kevin, being a very, isolated artist for the most part, working in isolation, for a lack of a better word, really. But to then, I have like a hypothesis about this, that it's that, it's a small group of artists right now that are interacting, with this technology, kind of relatively small. So that when you meet up with these people, you have something in common, and it's not just like superficial. It's actually something quite, substantial that you all have in common. Because I've, tried to find a community within just the arts for a while and have not really found my people, but then coming into this, it was like boom immediately. And exactly what you're talking about, the data points that we're all collecting, we were all interested in similar data points. You get what I mean? So like,
yeah.
I felt the same kind of sense of community and everything, but I attribute it to a lot more than just the pandemic, for sure. It's kind of like us, internet people coming out from under the rocks.
Yeah. Well, you Jesse you were quite well known, pre-NFT.
To some
degree. But I guess it wasn't really commercial, was it? Or was it back then?
I mean, there was commercial success for sure, but it was, the isolation that I was feeling was definitely a self-imposed isolation, where I just didn't feel like I found my, my people, for lack of a better word, until like this crypto scene, and like Sky hit me up like over a year ago now. It was like me and him kind of right away clicked, because we were both coming from like a 2008 Tumblr era, and like, what he called the golden era of Tumblr, which I love that term still, Sky. But, and me and him kicked it off right away. So it was like interesting for me to find out that like, oh, it's because my roots are really more in this, tied into this digital world more so than the majority of these other artists that I'm interacting with. So we don't have like the similar, you know what I mean? So like, Sky, do you understand what I mean too? Like, do you find that coming into this community, you had more
totally. For me also, I basically feel your words, because also I come from a kind of isolated time in my art process, where I didn't even feel in a way the urgency to open up. The thing with NFTs is that I think that it is so, it is maybe one of the very first example of hyper connection to a certain extent, So it almost becomes inevitable somehow, it kind of become a tool. I don't know if you know what I mean. It kind of become an artistic tool itself. Communication, I mean, at least that's what I experienced, it somehow became super interesting, connecting in a sort of a hybrid dimension, where coming back to conceptual art, everything is sort of conceptualized somehow, and so I think that's what really helped communication. And I must also say that before I was doing it wrong, because once I started to open up, I actually also felt that there is a reason to do that, and it's so fulfilling in a way to share with other artists and with other people. Having said so, let's remember that in the tradition, let's call it traditional art world, competition is also very high in every niche of each artist, so that's why I think it's rare to see collaborations, whereas NFT is a little bit more like music somehow, where kind of collaborating also give an additional push to the market as well. So I think like mixing up all these factors, you have the perfect recipe for a very connected community of artists.
Can I ask you something? I mean, I don't know if it's personal or not personal, but for the longest time, this sort of isolation or kind of self-centricity, autocentricity, I almost wondered if it isn't a form of narcissism. I was like, I actually disturbed, like maybe I'm a narcissist. And for long, did you ever feel possibly that could be
Kevin,
play?
100%. Like I've had that conversation. I remember, it must have been like 7 years ago with a girl actually, where talking about all like the issues I'm constantly dealing with, and just got like all this and that, and like she just straight up goes to me, she's like, "Isn't this just narcissism?" Like, and I'm like, "It fucking is. You're right." And like ever since then, I've kind of just embraced that fact of like, it is, but whatever.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I hope it's not, but I wanted to at least question it.
I think by definition it is. Like it's whether or not do you call is narcissism necessarily a bad thing? Like, what is your relationship with narcissism, or like how do you view narcissism, right? So like if to me it's like everybody's narcissist, like so I don't put that bad of a connotation on it all the time. So I don't mind saying like, yeah, it's a very narcissistic pursuit. But there's very non-narcissistic outcomes to it as well, and non-narcissistic motivations as well. But I think at the root, like this is just a personal belief, but I think personally, it's like impossible to not be a narcissist or to not act selfishly. I think it's almost like an impossibility, maybe that, philosophically, but Sky, maybe you have a great, adage for this.
I think that we live the contradiction, because at the end of the day, artists, as we were saying, tend to kind of being absorbed in their own dimension. But then what in a way brings them to art is also this need of sharing, and approval, and in a way insecurity, which is very paradoxal to the idea of narcissism, but in a way it complements it. So I think it also goes to psychological levels of human beings. For sure, I guess artists are these sort of people that they in a way experience they can feel the complexity of existence, and they want to and they try to give a subjective answer, because they feel that actually everything doesn't really make sense as it is portrayed, So I think it's a mix of things, but for sure, if we analyze many artists, I think a common trait would be to have, in a way, that people could classify artists in this sort of narcissist or egoic category. Also because you need somehow this relationship with your ego sometime, and somehow to rape it too sometime, to then really go deeper, I think. So it is a very complex matter, I suppose.
and I would worry about developing like a god complex, because to some extent it's almost like alchemy. You're taking seemingly nothing and turning it into something of value, of various types of value as well. And that's I mean, that process, even if you can manage to think of it external to you, is really powerful. And I think it's important to sort of keep it outside of you and sort of keep that distance. Because I think if you don't keep that distance, then you definitely run the risk of, becoming a narcissist.
Absolutely. But also, you see, for example, you're bringing up the idea of God, no? Because being God, is not necessarily related to super ego, but he also gets responsibilities somehow, no? So I think this idea of God, because, for example, this is a very interesting topic. Actually, maybe I would like to ask you all a question, like if you guys believe in God, or what is your idea around that topic? Because in my philosophy is I consider myself an atheist, for example, but I have my own definition of atheism, which is basically the refusal of the concept of divinity. So if you see it in this way, then to say I'm God, it kind of gets a different perspective. That's the reason why I'm saying so, is because one of my first works in the street of London was to use the words "be God" as a slogan to people, because I felt this as a provocation that I wanted to, in a way, challenge. When I was young and I was still very confrontational, I wanted to, to challenge people in a way, to even challenge this huge topic somehow. What do you, if I can ask, or if you like to share, what is your take on this word of three words?
I'm happy to answer that in just a second. I think I'm worried that maybe this conversation isn't already like so self-indulgent. I'm just wondering if I were watching this, and I'm like, what are these three narcissists going on about? Anyway,
you started it all, though.
My concept of God, I think, I don't know, but I think there's some power behind all of it. But that's about as far as I go. I talk a lot about. So actually, the way I describe, I speak about things being sacred a lot, and I speak about living in a magical realm. And as soon as I say these words, with some people anyway, I think they're charged with something that causes some people to reflexively, like, get defensive, because I think there's something in there, that the implication that I'm getting religious or I'm invoking God when I talk about things being sacred, or that we live in a magical realm. I think we do live in a magical realm. It sure seems like magic, things that we can't explain, science, science that is obviously beyond our comprehension, or so I don't know, but I have to say that as a former scientist, as someone who studied microbiology and cognitive science, I left science to pursue my work as an artist, because the questions that I wanted answers to, I couldn't answer with science. Science broke down. Science couldn't go that extra mile, and I feel. And feel is the operative word there, but I feel like I get closer to the answers that I want through art.
That's beautiful. I love that. How long ago was this that you were working in science, or those science fields?
Well, I'm 52, so I would say when I was around 21, 22. So that's already, it's hard to imagine, 30 years ago. I've identified as an artist since 1989, which is 30 some years ago. I mean, this is another thing. You guys are, relatively young, but this is, for me, one of the most beautiful things, because I can remember being, your age or younger. I can remember being 20 years old, wondering, what am I going to be like at 50, 52, something like that. And I'm pretty much who I wanted to be. Thank God. Like, thank God. Thank God. No, but this is the coolest thing, actually. I mean, I wish I were in a little bit better shape. I wish things didn't ache as much. But all things considered, I'm pretty happy, because I remember being 20 years old, having friends in their 50s, not thinking like, I thought I was just a young guy with older friends. And then there was a part of me, it's like, well, that older guy is pretty cool that he's got younger friends, and the mind seems fresh. The mind doesn't seem stale, Now, while my memory may fade from time to time, which I put off to long COVID, it's a big part of me staying kind of aware of what the kids, but like what young people are interested in. I just never, that just endlessly fascinates me. And emergent technology, I make an effort to stay apprised of all that. So anyway, I'm not sure how we, I don't even know what the question was, but 52 so far. I don't know how 53 is going to be, but 52 is pretty good.
I mean, that's great though, and I love to hear your perspective, especially on age and like relating to new and upcoming things as a way to keep young. It's, something that I'm really, I try to keep up on music and somewhat technology and stuff as well. But that brings us to a really great like kind of inroad into blockchain technology, because you say, or at least all the bios about you say, Kevin, that blockchain is your favorite medium. And then I know Sky, you have another relationship with the blockchain where you're interacting with it in your own unique way, but you both are very knowledgeable. And I would love to both get like kind of your take on how you came upon the blockchain. And if we can start with you, Kevin, because using the blockchain as your medium, coming from, you had a science background, that does make sense, but you were a photographer as well. Where did the crypto come in?
Yeah, well, I always saw that I was always aware of leveraging technology in my practice of making art. So photography for me, whether even before digital, I was aware that I was using a machine, and I was not at the mercy of, but I was limited or aided in any case by optic technology and photochemical technology. And then when digital came in, instead of photochemistry, it became photoelectronics and sensor technology. And I became very interested in early forms of computer vision and computational photography. My first foray into I think tech that would inform my work later on was through microbiology. I was interested in using, at the time, early kind of nascent neural networks, what we called fuzzy logic. It's essentially a form of machine learning or AI, and I was using it to. I was working on a project to identify cervical cancer in Pap smears. And so and boy, we didn't have a lot of tools back then. And so I kind of cut my teeth on AI way back then. So that's like circa 1990. And wow. then many years later, I kind of revisited computer vision, and just I became aware of a class of artists that existed who were interested in generative photography. And so, I was tweaking firmware and, playing with trying to push things out of sensors that they weren't meant to do. I was playing with the idea of lensless photography. I was aware that a lot of the emerging technologies came out of the military. So I would spend a lot of time researching what were they up to, because they had the coolest shit, like, working on cameras that see around walls, and they don't even have lenses. They shoot lasers at something behind the wall, and then the signature that the laser sends back to a receptor informs the shape. And like, so I kind of like, I played with that stuff. And that's, I think, the thing is that if you like, if you're interested in technology, then you do play with these things. And then years of playing with AI and playing with this. Yeah. Okay. So, for me, it was 2012. I was in Ireland, and I was working on different things. I was working with a lot of tech, and I was interested in security, cryptography, and security, and put together a conceptual art project that was meant to be like a messenger. That would be a web-based messenger that required no authentication. We didn't store any data. We didn't. It was that was the first kind of version of it. People could send messages to each other, encrypted messages, and sharing keys. It was very clumsy, but it worked. And it was called QuickDesk at the time, and got a lot of press around it because people were moving Bitcoin through it off chain just by sharing keys with each other through it. And there were people in different parts of the world using it because they were in countries where you get into a lot of trouble for saying the wrong thing. And I made an app version of this eventually called 1.1. And so through this work and the technology that we had, which was actually really quite clever, it was more than just obfuscation. It was really like, you could not trace a message back to a device. It coincided with the time when all these people were developing Bitcoin wallets, and so I kept getting emails from founders saying maybe that technology you're using for your discrete messenger would be in some way, we could use it in our wallet, in our crypto wallet, and so at the time I was aware of blockchain, and the reason why, because a friend of mine called me one day and said, hey, we should mine this thing called Dogecoin. It was like 2012, and so we did, and so that's how I just learned about the whole concept of mining and how it worked, hands-on, just real hands-on, and that was fun. But then I didn't know much, so I thought, okay, let's see if maybe there's some business to be done here. So I spent 2 weeks doing a deep dive into all things blockchain, and we had some real kind of blockchain experts in Ireland at the time, academics and some practical people. Sorry, this is getting long-winded, but and so he after 2 weeks, I knew more about blockchain than I ever expected to know, and yet I felt like I didn't know anything. If you remember, like back then, it was like that. Like as much as like, do you really know? Do you really like it? Everything were more questions, and I would obsess as a someone kind of obsessed with security. I was obsessed on like edge cases and what happens if quantum computing emerges, and and I was just like, I just backed off it all. I was like, no, I can't deal with this. It just like I just wasn't. At the time, there were these like things that would happen occasionally, these anomalistic things that were just edge cases that ruined everybody's day, and we haven't really had any of those, I guess, lately. But at the time, they kind of happened with some every now and then, and so at that point, I became really interested in cryptographic keys and the blockchain and the magic. Way that you could spin up a zillion of them, a second, and never and don't have collisions. And I thought, as a repository of value. And the first thing I did was in 2013, I collated 500 Bitcoin public and private keys. Made a book called Bank, because I saw it as a bank, and then just thought, whether I thought that these strings of alphanumerics, they could be even used to communicate, again, like to send messages between machines. This moment that we're having right now, the three of us, and on my screen anyway, you two at the top and the bottom with the background, we both have glasses, the mood, the general mood. If everything in this moment could be encapsulated emotionally, maybe emotionally into an alphanumeric, then think about how quickly a computer could communicate to another computer everything that encapsulates that moment. And then I thought maybe we, with some level of intelligent augmentation, could also leverage that technology. This is kind of conceptual thinking, but like if I show you your postal code, I just show it to you right now with 5 digits or whatever it is. You don't have to think about that, or the number for emergency in the States, 911. If I show it to you, you don't think 911 emergency, you just think boom, emergency. So where's that breaking point? Where's that breaking point where those alphanumeric, is it 5 digits? If you see your phone number, do you see it right away, or do you have to kind of read it? So are we going to evolve to a state where I can show you 43 letters and numbers and boom, immediately it resonates like 911? So what I realized, we're dealing with language here. We're dealing with language. And then, I started seeing, I started thinking about the language in between the alphanumerics and the spaces between letters. And then I started thinking about how, you think you're encrypting something, but behind every act of encryption, you're actually revealing something else. Right away, you're revealing a story. First off, you're revealing a story about fear, the fear of, you wouldn't be encrypting something if you weren't afraid of it either being compromised or shared or this or that. So the blockchain became this playground, right? The blockchain just became this playground for me. And I mean, I don't want to keep going on, but then I tokenized myself into 10 million pieces of art in 2018, and shit went crazy.
No, but it's crazy. It's crazy how your early pieces are still super cutting edge even now. I mean,
Are they?
that's yes,
Thanks.
of course, because you were pushing it like you were like taking the macro concepts and just stress them out. You know what I mean? Just like highlighting even the contradictions. Because at least that's my reading. Because it's easy to shout to the super evolution and revolution, but then everything has always a con. Like something to investigate better before just yes, eureka. And generally is, for example, speculation or bubbles are an exact result of this, because then the study is not anymore on the table as it is in the beginning, when there is a lot of skepticism, so people take time. But then all of a sudden, like, there is a general awareness that shifts, and then everyone is just basically misbehaving, and just go crazy. And in fact, it's really different, my approach to yours, because I can see that you come from this tech, in a way, also very interest, no, almost scientific as well, on understanding what is also lays behind the appearance. Whereas for me, I have always been fascinated by the sociological and the psychological aspects of of everything. But then when I met the blockchain, after that, I took my time as well to kind of get around it. I was like, okay, this thing is gonna shape the next 10 years. We are on a verge of a cultural shift. And this for me is my subject, is where I love to dig into. And so for me, blockchain has always been a sort of huge narrative container somehow, where I can see things that are changing to a pace where to take your time to understand that can lead to so much complexity in the work that you want to put out. And so for me, the sociological aspect is what excites me the most, how people are changing their ethos, and how this very first, I'd say, internet culture. Because let's remember that I was reading a very interesting article that was basically explaining that the first internet was still a test on trying to translate what we live in the real life into the internet. Okay, and so that's why somehow it was limited. I think that with blockchain, for the first time, we have the very first native digital set of behaviors, sociological shifts, and not even going into market and commerce, because that is going to be completely revolutionized. So for me today, the things that excite me the most is to be into something really unpredictable, and that before arriving to be able to classify it clearly, many years will pass. And I'm looking forward to these years, because it will be a great experimentation, not only in art, but also in sociology, I think. And this relationship is super fascinating for me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, people's value systems are being tested in really really fun ways. I mean, most of what I do is about challenging people's value systems, and this technology has just made that so easy.
Can you go on about that, Kevin? With, like, when you say challenging people's value systems, like just
yeah, I'm happy to. I mean, okay, at the ground level, you have the conflict that some people have between physical and immaterial. And I mean, I on the one hand, I feel like haven't we gotten past that? But no, people still struggle with the idea that a virtual asset can in any way be superior to a physical asset, especially financially. But there are people who still struggle with that. And even push comes to shove, those that many that do claim to understand it, there at times they reveal themselves to still be on the fence about it. You know, I always talk about like how people are very quick to ascribe value to things. We are generally very quick to ascribe value. You know, that's worth this, that's worth this. I wouldn't pay this, I wouldn't pay that. That guy is full of potential. That girl, she's not. You know, and it's but when it comes to things that are priceless, then people don't know what to do. So people can flip NFTs all day long, and they know the price of an Azuki or the price of a doodle or whatever these things are, but yet they don't necessarily understand, even if they would agree that like human life is priceless, their actions that plug into quantifiably people, the quality of people's lives and you know, matters of life and death around the world kind of make no sense. It gets pretty perverse and illogical, and I chuckle and I laugh because you kind of have to laugh or you're crying because it really is perverse, and we all have it. I mean, to some extent, but I think with everything that we're witnessing now, you know, I mean, I first recognized this myself in 2000 and, well, I guess around 16, I had an artwork, a photograph that sold for a lot of money. It was a photograph of a potato, and so a potato is an object that most people think of as being you know, very little value, and it's taken for granted. And so even though it would be presented, I think, you know, well, as a work of art, somehow it's like for many people they can't get past the potato. They can't get past their disdain almost for something so cheap. And when it's sold for, you know, enough money to buy a large house in a major city, you hear the cacophony of people, you know, saying, "Oh, the buyer must have had more dollars than cents. This is a case of the emperor's new clothes." They all come out. They all think they're so clever with their like little sayings. You know, how can you live with yourself? Do you know how many tons of potatoes this could have bought to feed half the world? Yeah, this is all true. This is all true, and you know, and I hope that they're also taking inventory of their own, you know, highly logical value system. I'm sure.
Yeah.
But when these things happen, I didn't think about it so much with my own. I had years of, you know, crazy press around that, but it wasn't until just a couple of years ago when Catalan, Maurizio Catalan had his banana, you know, with the tape, you know, at Art Basel, when that sold for whatever it sold for, let's call it 150 grand, I forget what it was. I was in Miami, and then the next day I was getting calls from magazines and newspapers all over the world asking for my comment on that. I guess because since the potato, it was sort of the most audacious thing that could have happened. And here's what I thought. I thought whether this was a legitimate sale, whether the whole thing was a publicity stunt, whether it's satire, whether it's serious, that didn't matter to me. What I thought was let's say it's 150 grand, $150,000 to have the entire world buzzing and talking about value and how we value things is priceless. And so I thought, whatever the hell happened there, it was a really positive thing, I think, because the moment you start saying that's crazy, you better take a look at yourself and see what's crazy.
Yeah, but even more priceless was the debate that it led to, you know, because
that's what I mean.
That's what art should do somehow, you know, or at least one of the things that art should do, or at least good art, is to actually open a discussion, you know.
That's my metric for success, is how quickly do they experience the work and move on to a valuable discussion. How quickly? If it's 1 second, then good.
Absolutely. And it's crazy that I would say not most, but a good number of people really think that that is not art. You know, this is very interesting too, if you think about it. And, you know, if you hear their reason, is because probably they say, okay, but there is no work, there is no craftsmanship, there is not effort. But what I always say, and like I and Jesse, we always speak about these topics. But what I think is that if people that say so is because they don't know what conceptual art is.
Sure.
Because if they, you know, conceptual art doesn't have the ambition to build something, you know, it's actually the power of the idea that worth much more than the action itself. And
well, you either learn this at home or you learn it possibly in a good school. But I think kids at very early age, you know, that needs to be made clear to them that you know, I mean, even my own my own father, you know, who he liked the work I was doing, and I knew he had a very broad taste. But you know, when at the end of the day, it would be like, you know, he'd see a Dutch master, and he'd be like, no, that's art.
This is art.
You know,
this is art.
Yeah, everything else is art, but that's art.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Doesn't that kind of go back to what you were saying, Kevin, about like questioning people's values, and then just that whole like materialism in general? Then basically, like, you know, when somebody says like, "Where's the art here?" Like that's a very materialistic sense, right? Because like the same way people don't want to put value onto a digital asset, it's like, what about mental assets? You know, like what about mental processing power? Like, what does that not work? Like, is that not valuable?
Yeah, exactly.
I totally,
and, you know, people buy art for a multitude of reasons, and to argue with them about why they do would be silly.
Absolutely. I mean, and you've both been in this, you know, community where value is so tied into the process of art, more so than it's like, I don't know, Kevin, you've been part of, you know, the art scene for a long time too, but like, value is always very important, right? But it's not always as transparent as it is within this community. Do you see that as to be like an advantage or a disadvantage?
I mean, you know, I generally lead with like, I don't like to talk about the art market. I don't like to talk about money. It's vulgar, and I believe that. And as an artist, I know better that I would never optimize for like what sells. And I understand people who might. I totally get that, and I know there is a business, and there is a, you know, I just can't. I could never allow myself to do that, because I know the moment that I would do that, my work would be shit. And so yeah, so that's an option for me. But look, if there are enough books to read, and there's enough anecdotal data that should inform everybody that the traditional art world, art market, the whole, you know, the whole thing has always been fairly corrupt. And so I say, like, so it's already corrupt. What do you think happens if you bring in a bunch of crypto bros? It ain't going to get any better. Like, you know, it's just, and the technology has just, you know, turbocharged it. It's like jet fuel, you know. So anything that you had a problem with before, well, you're going to have 100x that problem now. And many of the things that I think you liked before, now it's better. Like, you know, you liked receiving the work you bought before. It may have taken you a week or 2 weeks to get it. Well, now you get it right away. You know, before you may have gotten paid at some point. Well, now you get paid straight away. But, you know, before you got screwed, you know, a little bit. Well, now you get screwed a lot and faster. So I don't know. It's just everything is just amplified. I think everything's amplified.
It's a really level-headed take, like that, you know, like the good is better and so is the bad is worse, you know, kind of, but it's hyper kind of everything. Like I can, because that's pretty subjective still, because not to say good or bad, it's better or worse. It's none of the above. It's different, you know, or it's whatever, you know. Sky, go ahead.
No, I mean, I think this also this narrative where NFT is saving the art world, in my opinion, is a bit out of context, because in reality, as Kevin is saying, this thing will grow with his negative part attached to it. What I think, me being a believer in cycles, is that simply we were to a time where a bit of purge or a bit of reset of certain power structures was really needed. And I don't think we only see that in art. I think we see that in economy as well. Like I think from the 80s, something really began to grow in a certain way, where what is crazy is that today, if you ask to a 30-year-old person if he trusts somehow economy or the state system, no one would say yes so easily. And I think this is a very strong symptom of the situation where we are now. And hope also became a very rare concept that people can grab to. So I think what is great about all these new cycles of innovations is that somehow this has to lead to rethink certain structures that are now too corrupted simply because they have been up to for too long. Okay, so what I love about this sense of innovation that is coming is that probably we will have the chance to rewrite a few things thanks to what is happening into the crypto space.
Yeah. And let's not get carried away with the utopian rhetoric. I can't stomach actually some of these Twitter spaces I go into where everyone's telling you that this is the great democratizer, and now people of color are going to make money, and women are going to make money, and everybody. No, it's still the same rich white guys in control for the most part, or maybe they're not all white, but anyway, they're wealthy. And so look, a fraction of a percent of people who identify as artists make even a modest living. In America, it's $10,000. A fraction of a percent make more than $10,000 a year as an artist, of people who identify as artists. And guess what? While there may be people who didn't make money before who are making money today in the crypto space, it's still a fraction of a percent. All the data is there. You look at OpenSea, you just look at all the projects, but all we hear about are the money things. The media, I mean, I don't like to be too hard on the media, but let's face it, they only run stories on art when there's a price tag attached to it. And then now a $5 million price tag isn't enough. It's got to be 60 million, 70 million. So what's going on? They're engineering sales to satisfy the appetite of these sensationalist media outlets, because once it was a $1 million CryptoPunk, then it was a $5 million CryptoPunk. Well, that wasn't enough. Then it was a $4.5 million sale in 72 hours. Then it's $69 million sale. I mean, what's next? Next is going to be 100 million. First $1 billion sale, I'm sure, is coming. But it's and the media does a disservice, because you get it too. I know you guys get it too. I have people who I haven't spoken to in 10, 12 years calling me saying, Kevin, I know you're into all that NFT stuff. I'd love to get in on that too. And I'm like, but you're a yoga teacher. Like, what does that have to do with it? Like, so.
Yeah, but you know what? Actually, I think that in a way, because a thing that I don't agree is that people tend, like, at least who I'm talking to, is like, now there is this, because art was the very first case of very successful use of NFTs. Okay.
Yeah, right.
So now people tend to associate art to NFTs, but in reality, NFTs is like such a, and what I can see for sure beneficial in future is that content creation will be very facilitated, or at least to have an income, because how many blogs or content creators today have communities that support them. The problem is that it's very hard to monetize on that. So on that level, I can see it very beneficial. Now, if we want to put art into the spectrum of content creation, which is in a way it is, so even art will be, somehow many more people maybe will have at least the possibility to be straight into the market. Where I see it very revolutionary is on a more social media level. So if really the contents that we upload every day on social media one day will be NFTs, I think that can really lead to a substantial, inspiring more people to create content, because it will be more, it will create more income than maybe just doing a very boring job, 8 to 6 to the office. So that's very interesting to me.
No, for sure, the NFT is much bigger than art. Actually, it will be. Yeah, that's for sure. It's nice that we're an early use case, but yeah, I think it's going to, as a technological structure, it's going to have much greater implications than just delivering art.
Definitely. Sky, what you're saying, like, I mean, this just kind of came to mind while you were talking. It's like they're a risk, or not even a risk, but like what you're saying just kind of sounds like an evolution of the influencer more than like an onboarding of traditional artists. You know what I mean? Like, or it sounds like that's like, yeah, I don't know if like what there is there about that, but
I think like the decentralization is super important, but culture shouldn't be forgotten. You know, that's a bit my motto, because it's true that it's true that there is a system which is built on sort of a pyramid level, but at the same time, these are institutions that carries culture through centuries somehow. So I think that now what the risk for NFT is or NFT culture, let's call it, is to feel unbeatable somehow, but strength is never built on ignorance. You know, strength is always built on knowledge. And so I think that because this thing being so fast, being so rapid, being so easy to judge on, saying, okay, we are the new system or whatever, but actually a system to function needs ethos, needs critic, needs this sort of thing, and not only on an art level, but on a social level. So the risk that I can see is this one. The reason why I really love the FakeWhale project is because I see that the mission is that one, you know, is to try to bring the importance of culture and, you know, the path of artists, why they do something, what are their inspirations. I think all this is very important. Otherwise, the risk is to only focus, as we were saying at the beginning, on data, you know, but that becomes even more dystopic somehow than the society where we are right now, if you think about it.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm going to switch direction just a little bit, because I want to, like, I'm into all that. And I know like you both are very into that, but it brings to mind for me, because for me, I'm very much a studio artist. I'm in there, you know, like getting dirty with it. And I'm curious what your studio days look like, or if there is such a studio day for you, Kevin, or like what the process of creating art looks like for you.
Well, I start with a little bit of advice to you two young kids. I mean, I just wish I made more art when I was younger. I was an artist and I was producing, and I had I could have produced more work. Now the question would be, why would you produce more work? Well, you know, so all I can say is I wish there was more of it. Like, there's no reason why there shouldn't have been. I wasn't lazy. I wasn't trying to, like, you know, engineer scarcity. It just, for whatever reason, I don't know. I just feel like I should have had more work.
Okay, one second. When are we talking? Like,
so I'm going back. I'm going back to the beginning. I'm going back, you know, 30 years. I'm going
okay,
back.
Why do you think that now? Like, what is it about? Like, why exactly do you think you should have made more work back then? Just because you want more? Or?
Well, I mean, I guess I just don't think there is any reason why I shouldn't have created.
So you think more of it as like a mismanagement of time?
Well, no, you know, now that as I'm thinking of, probably the reason had to do with economical reasons. I couldn't afford to, maybe. That's probably what it was. In the early days, I couldn't afford to. So
but why do you want more? Like, what makes you think you should have made more?
I mean, I would have liked okay, well, okay, there's a practical thing that might be informing this idea in the first place. It's that now I have a lot of institutions contacting me, and they want to see my early work. So, and I have early work. I have plenty of it, but I just like, I couldn't do like 10 simultaneous shows, and what my average studio day, it's different. I would say that I spend, well, I talk about this with friends all the time. I spend like 99% of the time thinking about things. My wife might dispute that. She might, but I'm thinking, you guys know what I'm talking about. I'm thinking all the time. I'm thinking, and then I execute explosively. This is where I get a little megalomaniacal. I believe I can do the work of 1,000 men and explosively for short amounts of time. And so like I think, I stew on this, and then one day I just like boom, 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 execute. Okay, so not all projects, but a lot of my workflow is like that. So a lot of back in the day sitting in cafes and doodling and making notes and collecting data. A lot of my work has to do with collecting data, and so now I have a very strange situation. Is that I have a lot of requests for work and shows. So a lot of my time right now, I'm in the studio a lot right now because I have to. I don't have to, I suppose, but I want to produce work for different things, whether it's a show, like whether it's a museum show or a collector or a commission or for myself. So that same advice that I would have given my younger self, I'm taking to heart now. I'm producing more right now. It's still not out of control. I don't think I'm that prolific to begin with, but I'm doing more. Like in the past, I'd have an idea and I'd make 6 to 8 to 10 maybe works of art that represent this project that I'm working on. But now I'm like, why don't I just make more? It's not about producing more work to sell. It's about exploring something deeper, right? So this isn't like these generative projects where you press a button and you could do 100 or you could do 10,000. It doesn't really matter. This is work that does entail a lot of human effort, but I'm happy to do it. It's the most enjoyable thing in the world. So why don't I explore these things probably a little bit deeper, through and see the stuff through output. But by the way, does anybody have this issue? I've had this problem. I think it's a problem my whole life. Is I treat projects sort of like puzzles in a way. And once in my mind, I solve them, or once I realize the vision in my mind, I kind of forget that in the real world, I need to actually finish it. And it's because I don't need other people's validation. Most of the time.
Sorry if I stress it again, but because you are a good conceptual artist, that's what it should be. Like born and die in the head. That's it.
Yeah. No, but it's crazy though, because then people are like, I tell them about something. They're like, oh, I'd love to see it. Well, I never made it. It's just something I worked through in my head. It has its whole cycle of everything except the final realization. So now I think in my old age, my older age, I make an effort to see everything through to its finish.
It's so funny. It's like the text message. You're like, oh, I just answered you in my head. I didn't actually send you. I didn't actually respond to you.
Well, you get that dopamine hit. You get that like endorphin or dopamine or whatever it is. You get that chemical satisfaction of finishing the work, even though it's not finished, just because in your head you see the finish line.
Totally.
Yeah. That's
I
really
relate to that. I relate to that a lot. For me now is a new era in a way, because before NFTs I basically spent 3 years on conceptual photography. So I was really into this world of ideas, and most of my shots were taken with iPhone. So I was kind of going around, just I was in that mood. Then when I joined NFT, I actually began this new project, which was Skygolpe, which was my, it was a bit that I wanted to try to paint. I had the idea in mind of the concept, the silhouettes, blending it with philosophy, with psychology. I was thinking to it a lot. And then I basically start to produce all this body of work. Then what happened? The NFT kicked in, and my work has been liked, and so this has contributed for me to have 2 crazy years where basically I was super focused on this project that then connected back, for example, with photography. So if you see my first works, they were much more paint. So basically I was doing the paintings first, and then I was trying to somehow digitalize them, animate them, but slightly, that was my first approach. Then I started to mix elements. So I started again doing photography. I was painting, but I was not painting the subjects. I was doing different paintings, and then I was taking pictures of what I care, of the textures, and then assemble everything again into digital. So it was 2 years that basically I was so much into this new technique for me, and I enjoyed it a lot, and I made tons of work, really. Now, in this last chapter, I'd say from beginning of 2022, I'm really feeling again the urgency to go back a lot to my conceptual work too. So
urgency. Tell me, why is it urgent?
Because I think is what represents me the more. I mean, is what goes go closer to my perfect idea of art. Is what I would advocate for.
Do you have a fear? I'm getting at something that I can relate to myself, but do you have to some extent a fear of only being known for Skygolpe work?
No, when I was younger, maybe I would have had this. Now I feel much more mature, and I know myself better. So I know that I have more identities inside myself. Okay. And now I cope with it. And so I think I will always love to have the Skygolpe project to carry on, and it's my intention to carry it on. What I'm saying is that, and I enjoy that, because it also gave me satisfaction and success, and more than everything, the possibility to just focus on art now. Okay, so now that I have this new possibility, which is to use my entire time focusing on art, so other things start to kick in my mind. Okay, and so now I feel this, and so I relate so much to what you were saying before, because, for example, in this past 2-3 months, most of my studio time is thinking. It's thinking, and just stressing concepts out, putting them down on paper, thinking, writing aphorisms, writing things, writing concepts. And this has been my latest studio. But I like.
But your work is very emotive. It's emotionally charged. And as you're talking about thinking, and I'm talking about thinking, and I think a lot about. I think a lot about how my own work, I want to engage with the artist, with the collector or the audience emotionally, not intellectually. So it makes me wonder if we don't have to think, so that when the time is right, we can just work emotionally.
Yes, for sure. But because these 2 years for me were very emotional, like super emotional. I basically gave my rawest, my freest, most free way of approaching creativity, okay, and art somehow. So they were super instinctive, I would say. But again, I love building concepts, and I think that I want this to be a very big part of my future. You know, as you were saying before, like you have to visualize your future, otherwise you will always chase what you will always chase the future somehow. Whereas
you showed. Sorry, I was going to say you showed me
whereas
some of
if
your
you visualize
conceptual
your
work.
future, sorry.
We have a little bit of a lag. You showed me some of your conceptual work, and I loved it. And I also saw a little bit of the stuff you're doing now, and I see that you're coming kind of full circle there. And it's I'm very excited to see the new. It's not gonna You're gonna use a different name, right?
No.
Oh, you're not. Okay.
No.
Still Skygolpe.
No.
Okay.
Absolutely, and that's again, the younger me would have thought this way.
Okay.
Whereas now I feel very centered. Like I
good.
feel like I can be whatever I want to. Okay. And having said so, I also love the business side of art. I treat that also as a sort of performance somehow, because you play with many things in concepts in the mind. And so, for example, and by the way, I am looking forward to go back to Skygolpe's work. Now I also have a bit of archives of unreleased works of Skygolpe, you know, so I can kind of, I'm all set, you know, so I can kind of focus on.
But you're speaking of Skygolpe in the third person. Is it like is it like an alter ego? Is it like a twin? Is it like
it's a project? It's a project.
Okay.
It's a project. Is a project. Is a name. Is what is a concept, basically, you know, and is a concept that has a lot to do with psychology, philosophy related to art. Okay, in a more figurative / evocative approach. Okay, which is something that I love to explore and I enjoyed a lot doing. Now, do I have to limit myself to this segment? No, because I have many ideas that I want to work on, you know, many different projects that I would love to work on. And so, and I've been quite disciplined as well. So I could have an archive now. So I have body of work, which is there, you know? So now I can cut as much time as I want to develop this new concept that I'm doing, which has to do with instead installations, of course, conceptual art, and the idea of this mixed reality.
I love it. I love that work.
Where basically reality doesn't have to necessarily exist. This is the underline of the project, let's say. But it's amazing. And then, as you say, the good thing about blockchain and is also that the blockchain itself can be a tool to create, as some of your works has shown really brilliantly. Okay. And because I was so much into this Skygolpe structure, is almost as if I didn't explore yet very deeply other tools of making art, maybe with a wider approach. And so now I'm really into this constant brainstorming of ideas, but I really love that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's heavy because it's absorbing, and that's the problem with me, is that I tend to. It's hard for me then to reconnect with the outside. I don't know if you guys experience this too, but when it gets so intense, it becomes hard, and maybe other things are let a bit down, you know, which is never great, I guess.
What about you, Jesse? your studio practice? Are you working every day? Are you making art every day?
Yeah, I am. I'm not prepared to answer questions.
Oh,
but
okay,
yeah,
okay.
no. I work every day. Like I have a very like almost monastic like approach to my work and my life in general, where it's somewhat regimented in the way like I wake up the same time every day in the morning without an alarm, and like have coffee and I start working every day, just like, yeah, as long as there's nothing else. And I try to form it so like arrange my life so that there is nothing else. And it's just like I work all day and I usually have a break and I run and or bike or take a nap. And then I go back to it and I have what I call my second day, where I wake up a second time in the day and I have another full work day before going to bed. So and that's what I do unless I'm traveling. So yeah.
Do you guys find that I don't know where this came from, I guess because I'm looking at the physical art on the wall. Do you guys find that your practice in making art and in the form of NFTs has led to more interest or in your physical work, or certainly your collectors of your NFTs after a while start asking for physical work?
For me, I'm gonna be very quick. For me, I didn't have a market before about physicals. So what happened is that, I'd say a very low percentage of collectors that collect NFT also ask me, about physicals, but it's not at the moment. It's not I would say this is the balance.
For me, it's interesting coming to NFTs and the crypto community or whatever. Like my work had always been very digital, like even though it looks very physical, which is kind of the point, but I've always been very digital. When I started making work kind of like that, I would, have little mind experiments with myself of like, how good of a collage can I do where people think it's digital, but it's actually physical? Or like, what can I do digitally with Photoshop where I use it so sloppily that people think it's physically done? But it led to the issue of that when galleries came around, like at a certain point in my career, that my work was so digital that I had to learn how to reverse engineer it back into physical pieces, which I did. Like I've learned many different processes or taught myself, many different ways, or actually probably invented many ways of taking digital imagery and making it physical, and it's still as effective. But when I came to NFTs, my first thought was like, fuck yeah, I don't have to do that anymore. But I realized that my true, like, I need to work physically. So like my physical practice, my family is like all mechanics and architects and stuff, like carpenters, I should say, not architects. And so I definitely have that in my blood where I need to be using my hands and stuff like that. And what's funny now is that like a lot of the people who were interested in me or collecting me over the last, not even year, I guess, while being in the NFTs, are just now somewhat like they knew that I worked physically, but this is all my fault, or like all up to me, obviously, to show them. But I think I've been slowly showing more of my physical practice, that now there is quite a few collectors coming to me, or a lot of interest being like, it's like, oh, is there a physical that comes with this? They're like, could you do a physical of that? Or is there a digital of this physical? Or people are beginning to, and I've been thinking about it a lot more recently about how like I think it's pretty rare actually maybe for like there to be very well done physical pieces that directly relate to the NFTs. That's not a digital print, or it's not a digital frame or something like that, but actually like a piece of art that you'd want to legitimately hang in your home. So like it's something I'm definitely thinking about more lately.
For me,
and maybe they're not even the same work. Sorry, maybe they're not even the same work.
Well, a lot of the times there could be like a variant. That's how it works for me a lot of the time, where it's like, this isn't going to be the exact, like what I scanned to turn into the digital thing, like because I did digital work after the scan, that's that. But then how I reverse engineered it into a physical piece, there's going to be differences. There's going to be some slight variations, which I think is cool.
Yeah, for me it was a choice also. From the beginning, I could have had the possibility to show the physical and the digital somehow and base the promotion on. Instead, I really decided to just show somehow the digital, because I felt this as a revolutionary somehow, and I read that necessity of the market, and by the way, I'm working also on the physical. But I love the idea to keep it separated. I think that's more interesting as a concept. And by the way, I saw your show at Nigel Draxler in
Oh,
looks amazing. I mean,
thank
I
you.
saw the
Thank you.
website, the images.
Oh, okay.
Just,
I actually wanted to like that's something I definitely like. I was coming directly for it, so you guys hit this right on the head. That Kevin, like, I'm not sure. Maybe you have a long painting practice, and I'm just not familiar, haven't seen it. But I saw like you were doing these physical renditions of what looked like your digital work, or
Yeah.
you're very gestural in your brushstroke, very like emotive in the way that you're working. Is painting something that you're coming to new, or is it something that you've always done, or is this the first time you're exhibiting paintings? What's the relationship?
I painted like for 30 some years, but you're right. It's my first solo show of paintings.
Okay.
I've shown paintings. I did a triptych a couple of years ago at the National Museum of China, and I do work, paint on canvas. What's particularly interesting for me with this series of work, Synthetic Optimism, is you're right. It's essentially it's the same kind of workflow as I have with my other work. I train on some data. I work in a feedback loop with the data. It's not very scientific. It's ritualistic. It's probably unrepeatable. But I come under the influence of the technology, and then there's an output. And so it's either a digital output, or then I say no. Now I'm going to finish it fully human by hand. And I do it for a couple of reasons. Sometimes I just want to get out of I want to come out from under the influence of the technology. And that adds something else. Now, a lot of my work is about obfuscation and about corruption. And so with paint and just the techniques and the tools that I have at my disposal, I can add another layer of obfuscation and corruption that just feels different. I'd love to say, like you did, I wish, I just love the physicality of it and stuff. And I mean, I do a little bit, like I enjoy painting, but I very quickly get to the point where I'm like, damn it, I just got paint on these pants. Why didn't I change my pants? And the whole place stinks of paint. And I've got these damn brushes I've got to clean, and I've been using the mineral spirits to clean my brushes, and now the skin on my fingers is drying out, and it's gross. It's violent. It's like it's not pretty.
That's what I love about it. That's violence. That's you do. You hit it, man. Violent.
Yeah. No. So it's kind of a back and forth. I forget about that, and then I just want to go back to the relatively sterile environment of the computer. But then after that, I want to go back to the I don't know. It's just a back and forth thing. But
how about you, Sky? How do you feel about that, between the sterility of working online or digitally to
be honest, I also have this conflictual relationship with painting, but I must say that then every time I do it, I feel damn good. Like I has some sort of, I don't know, therapeutic thing attached to it. Is really amazing in that sense. But then again, like for me to go into the painting, it means to go away from my thinking, because I wake up, I think, I eat, I think, blah, blah, blah. So when I go into painting, basically I suspend. So that's why probably I feel so better after. But it's conflictual, because at the same time, then when I'm maybe in my thinking zone, I don't feel like I want to go into the painting zone. But then, trying to be a bit disciplined and balancing things, then when you actually go into painting, you never regret it, or at least that's my experience so far.
Kevin, it made me think of something that you said earlier. Go ahead, Kevin. I don't want to interrupt you.
I was just going to say that I actually do feel more connected to the physical work, to those paintings, than I do the digital work. I mean, I like them both. I relate to them both, but I do feel like I have a deeper emotional connection to the paintings. I think just by virtue of the fact that I put so much of my physical self into it.
What I was going to say is that when Sky was talking, it made me think of something that you brought up earlier, Kevin, about this idea of the possible, like maybe it takes so much thinking so that you're able to, work sporadically, or what was the explosively? You said you work explosively. You think a lot and then you work explosively, and you're hypothesizing that maybe, maybe all that thinking is necessary so that there is that explosion then when it does happen. And I thought that was really interesting because I don't consider myself a conceptual artist, even though when me and Sky talk, like he can like warp those words into whatever the hell he wants them to be.
No, you are.
Make me into a conceptual artist. But I too sit around and think like so much, and like but then when it comes to the actual physical practice, I don't feel that any of the stuff that I thought about is actually like, it's not like I thought about a subject and now I'm painting about the subject, unless you want to go back to that narcissistic shit and say, like I'm like obsessing over my, my own, whatever, neurosis and shit like that. And then when I work, it's an explosion of all that fucking like energy or whatever that was been worked up in the mind maybe. But I was wondering if for you, Kevin, if working physically, like all that thinking, if you do get that cathartic thing that Sky is talking about when you work before you notice it's on your pants.
Yes, it's I think using traditional tools, if that's what you call a brush and paint and canvas, it's sort of, whether I like it or not, forces me to consider even more so where I fit in as an artist within the continuum of the practice and the tradition of making art. So like on the and there are thoughts that come into my head that don't come into my head when I'm making generative work or working on the computer. Working on the computer, I feel like, maybe I'm being a little over dramatic, but I feel like some sort of like astronaut, and I'm on the cutting edge, and I'm very much in control of my tools. And I would say, I would say I'm less in control of paint somehow. Ultimately it does kind of what I want it to do, but I'm hyper aware of the tradition of painting. Painting is something that's really charged, and within the art world and the art market, there's painting and there's everything else. And every 10 years or so, painting goes in and out of fashion. People say, like, there are those who like, it can seem very dated, but every 10 or 15 years, somebody does something in painting and they say, oh, it's the triumph of painting. There's something deeply embedded in our psyche that weights paint on canvas with some other kind of level of value, and at least it does for me, and I'm aware of it. And I'm also aware, I think as artists, one needs to be aware, and I know that you guys would be both, of whether or not you intentionally, or more importantly, inadvertently do something that's been done or seems derivative, and unintentionally, that would be the worst. Can you imagine, like, if you're a lover of art, and if you study art history and you want to understand if what you're making is significant within that continuum of making art, well, then you should probably have a good sense of whether or not your work is derivative. And I think with painting, it's even heightened, because at any given time in the world, there are only a couple dozen painters that gather 99% of the attention. And it's not that I'm trying to be part of that rare air, but I feel like as an artist, you want to keep your lane, so to speak. It's not just professional courtesy. It has to do with an identity as an artist. And I think somehow with painting, it's even heightened. Somehow, I think with painting, the worst crime for me would be to find out that I was painting in a style that some other artist in some other part of the world has been doing very successfully for years, and I somehow didn't know about it. It's kind of superficial, but
No. I totally agree. I totally agree. And I think even more, I mean, and to get that somehow is to try to develop your own technique instead of like looking for, because unless you are interested into into a classicism, or anyway, of course, like if you are a virtuoso, no, if you're developing a certain technique that goes from, if you want to be a realist painter, of course you will have to somehow have, you know, the story and the basis and the techniques and everything. But as far as I'm concerned, as soon as I kind of see that I'm mastering a technique, I try to run away from it as quick as I can, you know, that in everything, even in the digital. I always push myself to somehow inserting something that wasn't there before. Then maybe is not true every time, meaning, of course, there is a time that you find something that you like so much that you want to kind of, you really want to get all of it. But my biggest exercise, creative exercise, is to never find repair in technique, as far as I'm concerned, because that's how you really keep your work original, pure, and challenging somehow. Of course, it doesn't apply for for paintings in a more general, vision. But I think for developing your own technique is super important. And in a way, once you develop it, run away from it.
Did you say repair in technique?
Yeah, to find a shelter in technique.
Okay, could you just explain that a little bit or talk about that for a second?
Yeah, sure. So again, this is very personal, because the opposite of what I'm saying is to perfection something until it becomes sublime. Okay. But for what I'm interested is exactly the opposite, you know, because I want to preserve my spirit, and I don't want to invest time in perfectioning something, but I'd rather to find something new that steals my attention. Okay, that's how I keep hungry in my art practice, because otherwise the risk is to, again, coming back to self narcissistic somehow, is then you become the risk is to find a shelter in how good you are on something. And for me, art is the opposite.
It's almost like hiding behind technique is what you mean. Like I get what you.
Yes,
yeah,
I don't want to disrespect anyone. And again, is a personal is a personal thing. But for my,
of course,
for my philosophy of art is how I can keep myself hungry. And then I'm also very obsessed, as Kevin, to do something that was not made before in that way. That's a very big obsession for me too. I really care about that. I really care about that. Is too important for me.
I agree. I'm there with you too with that. Trying to be original. I'm always trying to entertain myself. That's like kind of what I always said. I was like a low key way of saying it. It was like I'm always just trying to like make something I haven't seen before, just to like entertain myself in the studio. Like every day, how fast can I do that or whatever. But what you're saying, Sky, definitely resonates with me, because I'm not trying to perfectly render anything either. You know, like I'm actually trying to do the opposite, like interrupting myself in purposeful ways where I'm separating myself, so I can't even, you know, physically can't even do the thing that would make it perfect. But in that, it's trying to like find the perfection in the chaos or whatever. So it's like just trying to like stir up the right kind of chaos in the studio where you a lot of times the way that I see my practice is that I'm just actually editing myself or curating my own shit. Instead of actually making it, I'm just curating what's coming out. Make a shit ton and curate it.
Is a philosophical debate as well, because is like me coming from the existentialist segment of philosophy is like somehow not knowing of not knowing. Okay, so is this that drives me compared to, for example, rationalism or like having the absolute truth on something. So I always want to stay on the opposite side of that somehow, if I can. Then, of course, method is important, as Cartesio was explaining. But there is method that is needed to serve, and there is method that is an aim. When method becomes an aim, and it completely loses interest for me.
Yes, I think so for me too. Any take, Kevin?
No, I concur.
Well, gentlemen, I mean, as we were talking, like I wouldn't even know where we would go from here, because this has been such a great conversation, and this has been like a perfect, I think, ending to this conversation. I can't thank you both enough. This has turned out like I didn't know what to expect from this, but it exceeded my expectations on just this felt like a really good conversation with fellow artists, like-minded artists that are honest in every way. So I really appreciate both of your time, and I look forward.
I just hope we don't come across as a bunch of self-indulgent narcissists. I really felt like
I think we did.
I'm having a conversation with you two, like completely forgetting at times that people might see this. This is a conversation that I would have with you.
Exactly, and that's what I was trying to say, kind of sloppily there at the end. Like that's why I think it was such a good conversation here. Is that like I forgot that this was being recorded, and was just like I was thinking, man, I could sit and listen to Kevin just talk for forever, like about these.
And I could talk forever too.
Well, we'll definitely have to have you back on. We'll do this again. Like I'd love to pick your brain on other things. And you're very well spoken. Like what do you give lectures or anything? I know that you've been traveling a lot. Like that's a great way to tie this up. Like what have you been up to, and what are you going to be up to, Kevin and Scott?
I'm moving to Japan in August for 1 year, just for the experience. I just think it'd be fun for the kids, and the time is right. I mean, I'll do a little bit of work there, I'm sure. But that's kind of the big thing. I have a solo show at the Francisco Carolina Museum in Linz in July. I have my show right now at Berlin at Draxler. And
how long does that go?
I think it's going to the end of summer. It was going to be 2 months, but I think they're just going to let it run through the.
Okay, cool.
For a while.
Awesome for everybody in Berlin. Great show at Draxler right now.
Thanks.
Your paintings are there, right?
Yeah.
Excellent. And I saw you were in Japan recently. Is that what you're doing? Like scoping out some place to live?
I was. I'm working on a project that I will probably reveal soon. But I'm not going there to work. I'm just going there for the experience with the kids.
Whereabouts in Japan, if you don't mind me asking?
We'll be in Tokyo.
Okay, cool. Yeah. That's really cool, man. Good for you. Awesome. Sky, what's coming up for you?
So I'm trying to set up a couple of shows too. Really important. So I'm really behind it at the moment. And on a more practical level, I have this crazy project with Mattia Cuttini, where you could actually mint directly from the website your own coded selfie in Ashi code. So the first one was a social experiment where we made 1,000 free mints. And it was amazing to see how people suddenly became creative, so this sparkle of creativity, of this sudden creativity was amazing, how people had fun and interact too. And so this also relates to what I was saying before on trying to understand blockchain and the tools that blockchain can offer to create, you know, experiences or these sort of things. And so now we're working on a V2, and we're very down to it. So on a practical level, this is at the moment is my main project, but I hope to be able to announce some important news soon on a show level.
And the project with Mattia is called All the Rest, right?
Yes. So basically, All the Rest in reality is a collection. Is the name of the collection, because Mattia came to my studio this summer, where we spent 4 days, day and night, just painting, talking about art, you know, concepts, philosophy, and so this concept came out, which is All the Rest, which in my opinion is very interesting, no? Because all the rest is somehow what is happening while you're doing something, but it is also what you are doing somehow. So in this post-pandemic and after what we experience, I think is a very broad concept that can be explored on a physical and on a digital level. And so that's our aim, and is also a bit of a anarchic and romantic project, meaning that there is no timeline, there is nothing, there is no roadmap. You know, sometimes through the years, some releases are popping, can be physical, can be digital, can be performances, can be installations. You know, I really feel well interacting with Mattia also on a creative level.
He's amazing. You guys are lovely, but he's the nicest. He's the nicest human I think I've met in a while.
He's one of the purest. I think he's one of the purest minds in the space, and so it always pushed me to you know, to see different angles than my general practice, and this is what is also very important to find, you know, a bit like you just saying with you, you know, like every time I deal with you, something happens crazy, you know, and same is with Mattia. And so, and for example, this project was not planned at all, you know, and that's the beauty of it. And these 2 years I was so focused with my career, with my strategy, because I also really care about that, you know. But I think it is so important to also keep a zone of free experimentation somehow, and Mattia is really helping me to find this zone. And so it's great, and I'm looking forward to that, and we'll see what's going to happen. So it's an ongoing performance that has no end announced.
Great. So anybody that missed out on that first 1,000, there's more to come.
Yes, there's more to come. There is a surprise. There is going to be a surprise, and yes, and soon we will announce a few informations.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you both very much for spending some time with us. I look forward to both, everything coming up out of both of you, and I can't wait to all hang in person sometime.
I just wanted to say that I think Kevin agrees with me, but the reason why this interview came out like that is because Jesse is such a good host, man. Like, I think he
puts you at ease.
I think you're amazing. Like, you really try to bring the thing to a very conversational level where it's so easy then to be yourself and just think. And I want to say that it was an honor, Kevin, because you definitely are one of my role models in the space. So I'm really honored that I could share this time with you.
It was definitely an honor, and definitely an honor to have you both. Thank you for the compliment, Sky. It makes it very easy when I'm with two artists that I, you know, like very much admire and am interested in. So like this was a treat, you know, for me too, completely.
Thank you, and thanks for watching, everyone.
Yeah, cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.